In terms of research, you are also quite involved in open science research. Do you integrate any insights from open science research or open science principles in your teaching and in this course in particular?
Yeah, and unfortunately for my students, this is throughout. And again, it's sort of like a value. It's for me, it's so important that when we look at evidence, you can't separate it from the way in which it was created. So in order for us to be able to use it and apply it, we must know part of the processes, right? We must have a look at how the sausage is made, unfortunately, to be able to know whether we want to eat the sausage. Let's stop that metaphor right there. So what I do within this course is try and weave in open science-based dimensions throughout. So we look at everything, the standard things that you might expect, things like pre-registration. Does that increase the quality of the research? Well, probably not, but it does defend against certain types of concerns and questionable research practices. We talk about replications, we talk about open data and sharing and things like that. But we also look, and I think this is what really, really gets to me, is the structural factors. So we can all look at individual researchers and say, oh, that wasn't their best work, or say there's evidence of questionable researcher practices. But we very rarely go, well, what's the context in which they work? And so in addition to the kind of open science practices, we also take a little kind of look through the back door of what happens with research. And so that includes, for example, how is research evaluated? How are researchers evaluated? And obviously, as soon as you look at the incentive structures of researchers, you go, well, clearly that's not always going to lead to the best quality evidence. And so we have a look at what factors that might have in terms of influencing the quality of research. We also look at the peripheral around that. And so a great example when I was writing the content was Dorothy Bishop and one of her students had just written a paper around paper mills, and it was fantastic and really showed some of those kind of contextual wider factors. And again, as somebody who works in occupational psychology, everybody likes to pin it on the individual. It's so infrequent that we look at the structures and the organizational support and procedures that embed what are the bad practices or encourage the bad practices, but to then point the fingers at the individual. I'm looking at the whole kind of structure. And again, picking on those sorts of dimensions is a really exciting way of encouraging that criticality and that inquisitive nature of thinking. And so whilst I embed it more kind of explicitly in that sort of way, we also do that in a more kind of implicit way, which is we also think about what are the values and what's the way of thinking associated with open science and open scholarship. And it's often prioritizing kind of transparency. It's about changing the focus from novelty and things like that to encouraging openness, thinking about criticality, and being open about both limitations and strengths of evidence. And I think that's a really core thing also when we think about and encourage particularly undergraduate, but still others, people to be critical. What that often translates to is this is poor, or the sample size isn't large enough. When we can go much further and say, okay, well, what does that mean? What would a good sample size look like and why? And to get people to think in those sorts of ways. So it's not necessarily me teaching open science, but it's about getting that mindset of what are the factors I should be thinking about and what's the style of thinking that I could adopt to get the answers I need.